Coming up on Need to Know, meet a Rochester man who has taken on quite a challenge. From feeding the hungry, working to help mitigate gang violence, and breaking religious stereotypes. He's on a mission to bring change to our city. His story up next. Also on the show, do you ever find yourself trying to defend why you live in Rochester? Some local blogs might be able to help. They're collecting all the reasons to celebrate our region and the many places to explore and discover Rochester. Their findings later on Need to Know. And see the work of a local artist who infuses emotion and mythology into her watercolor masterpieces. Need to Know starts right now. There doesn't seem to be a shortage of change agents in Rochester. I Need to Know we've introduced you to a number of individuals in our community who refuse to sit on the sidelines and simply talk about the issues. There are residents who have chosen to jump in and be a part of the change. That's exactly what Irshad Altheimer is doing. When he's not at RIT leading a course on criminal justice, you could find him at the nonprofit he founded, Barakah Muslim Charity. It's focused on serving Rochester's hungry. Or he could be working with the Rochester Police Department to help prevent gang retaliation crimes. Irshad Altheimer's mission is wide and deep, and he joins us now to share more. Irshad, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
So in understanding your work as a change agent, as we call it, I think it's important to begin with your teen years and your young adult growing up and young adult years growing up in Tacoma, Washington. Briefly explain what happened to you in the spring of 1997 and how that guides your work, in particular your research in relation to gang violence.
Well, I had come home with a group of friends. I was a sophomore in college, and we were hanging out, and we went to go see Scream, which is a popular movie at that time. And after that, we went to a friend's house, and when we left, there was a car across the street, and it waited for me to turn. And then that car shot into my car several times, killing my best friend and hitting me 3 times. And it just happened to be mistaken identity. We lived in a gang neighborhood, and they mistook us for members of a rival gang, and they ended up shooting the wrong people.
And how did that tragedy and you being a survivor of gang violence really drive the work that you're doing right now?
Well, even before that, the crack epidemic in many ways was really influential on my upbringing because it really turned my neighborhood upside down. So I was already interested in understanding social problems and looking for ways to articulate solutions for these social problems. And I think that really solidified my drive to really say, you know, I have to be part of a solution to help address these issues in hopes to reduce violence and to make these communities better places.
Well, and looking at Rochester, the overall crime rate, if we're looking at robberies, burglaries, and larcenies, is reportedly at a historic low. However, gun violence has been on the rise. That being said, how does your research and your expertise in this issue explain the state that we're in this community?
So I work with the Center for Public Safety Initiatives at RIT, and we focus on finding solutions to local crime problems. And our focus is on what we call near-term dispute-related violence. And a lot of times when we talk about violence, we talk about some of the background issues such as poverty and family breakdown. Those things are very important. But we also know if we want to predict who's going to be shot in the next week, we can often find signs, whether it's 911 calls, conflict, someone showing up at the hospital with a gunshot wound or a stab wound. So we focus on trying to deal with near-term violence in an attempt to reduce possible retaliation.
Well, I know, and on that note, you earned a W.E.B. Du Bois Fellowship in 2014
Yes.
for your work to understand and reduce dispute-related violence. You work with the RPD, and I first want to understand, how would you explain, for people who don't know, the definition, the meaning of dispute-related violence?
So the reason a lot of times when we think about violence, we think about gangs or we think about drugs, but there's always usually an underlying dispute. From my perspective and our perspective at the Research Center, sometimes when we get fixated on gangs, we can lose sight at the underlying issues that are leading to the dispute. So for instance, two guys who may be in a gang, maybe they're fighting over a gang's beef, maybe someone robbed another person over for drugs, maybe it's over a girlfriend, but the underlying issue is a dispute. If we tackle the dispute, we can think about solutions that directly deal with that issue. So oftentimes we may say, we want to tackle this gang, but it may only be 2 or 3 people in the gang who are disputing, right? So if we can focus in on those individuals, maybe there needs to be law enforcement intervention. Maybe we need to provide them social services. But if we focus on the actual dispute and the disputants, as opposed to some other background issues, we have a better chance of reducing the likelihood that there's going to be retaliation in the near term.
It seems like a difficult task. How do you really hone in on the dispute to really try to get ahead of it?
It's very difficult. Fortunately, people do know, like they say, the streets talk, and
Got it, yeah.
Oftentimes when there are ongoing disputes, even when people are not willing to talk to the police, people are aware that particular individuals in the neighborhood are disputing, are beefing. And so the question is, how do we get that intelligence, whether it's through law enforcement sources, non-law enforcement sources like Pathways to Peace, how do we get that intelligence and formulate a strategy that can leverage all of our resources to help prevent retaliation? But it is very difficult. The projects that we have been working on have been very ambitious. But after years of studying crime in Rochester, it has become clear that disputes are the most important factor.
Well, I understand that part of your work, the fellowship project with the W.E.B. Du Bois Fellowship, involved developing a violent dispute-related database and creating a framework really to reduce these incidents, these violent incidents. I want to know how is it working? What's the success rate?
So first, we've worked closely with the Monroe County Analysis Center, and they've collected a lot of data, and we've sent our students there to better understand these processes. And we have several data sources that help us to better understand disputes. We've been pretty effective thus far at tracking the disputes, identifying the key predictors of retaliatory disputes. We've been less successful at intervening in some of those disputes because oftentimes we look at they say hindsight is 20/20, right? So we can look at a dispute after and say, okay, these are the characteristics of one that had high levels of violence, and these are the characteristics of one that had low levels of violence. But it's a lot more difficult while the dispute is happening to intervene. Fortunately, we have a police department that is interested, and we have community partners like the Center for Dispute Settlement that are interested in trying to intervene. So what we've been trying to do is identify disputes and formulate strategies to intervene, and that part is still being fine-tuned.
Do you have an example of one that has worked that yet you can share, maybe without giving too much details? I know there's probably a level of privacy.
Well, the difficulty with this is that it works when nothing else happens, right? So there have been several incidents, however, where, for instance, high-risk individuals were involved, and there was either an RPD intervention or an intervention between or an intervention with Pathways to Peace where there was no further subsequent violence. And we have found that in our analysis that there have been situations where disputes that have been targeted have had lower levels of subsequent violence. So that tells us that we're on the right track. What's difficult is finding the exact intervention that will work for every dispute, because disputes are different. Sometimes you have neighbors who have a problem, and it can explode into a violent dispute. Well, you might want to take a different intervention with two people who happen to live 50 yards away from each other than you would if you had a gang, right? And I think that's one of the challenge there's not going to be a one-size-fits-all approach. It's going to challenge police to look at prevention as opposed to arrest. It challenges us to bear all of our resources. That means community, that means police, that means probation, that means parole. And oftentimes, these are individual institutions that, while they have the same mission, they don't work together. So I think we're moving in the right direction, but I don't think we've totally perfected the system yet.
Well, in the midst of all this, your role as a professor and your work in research in the criminal justice arena, there's another hat that you wear, and it's that of founder of the Baraka Muslim Charity. And one of my colleagues told me that Baraka all started not at its current location on North Street, but actually you and your wife started it out of the back of your car.
Yeah, so when I was a kid, we used to run out of food. Like, we experienced food insecurity. So it was never something where when I read those articles in the paper about hungry people, it's not like something theoretical for me, because I grew up and sometimes I would come home and there was no food, and we would drink like powdered milk with sugar in it, and we had all these crazy stories about all the stuff we ate, to keep us full. You talk to a lot of poor people who've had those experiences, right? So when I had started another nonprofit when I was in Detroit, before I took the position at RIT. And what we did with that nonprofit is we just drove around and we gave breakfast to the homeless. We fed about 200 people per week. We would load the food up and we would feed the homeless. And Detroit has a very bad problem with homelessness and hunger. When I came here, I was going to do the exact same thing, but then some people in the Muslim community said, well, let's do something different. And so when I started, the people in the community really really came around and they supported me, and then we all worked together to start this charity. So yeah, it started, my wife and I were driving around looking for some neighborhoods. We went down some of the poorer neighborhoods in the city, and now it's really grown, and we're hoping to grow and continue to serve the community in a better way.
Well, you officially launched the nonprofit in 2013, and you provide social services for the community, and you emphasize that your goal is to reach both Muslims and non-Muslims, regardless of race and gender and ethnicity. And I want to know, in your opinion, how is Baraka helping to break religious stereotypes that some may have of the Muslim faith?
Well, I think that there's a particular narrative out there about Muslims. And as an American Muslim, and understanding the emphasis that Islam puts on charity, it's really important for me to show and provide an alternative narrative for people. And so it was a natural opportunity for us, because on one hand, our religion really emphasizes charity. On the other hand, there's a great need here in Rochester. And I think there are a lot of people in the Muslim community who really were looking to give charity, but they don't really know how to go about doing that. And a lot of our members of our community are immigrants. Some had focused on sending money overseas. After 9/11, the kind of dynamics of charity sending overseas had really changed, but people didn't really have the infrastructure in place to really give in the city. A lot of our members of our community do support United Way and other organizations, but in terms of starting our own charity, people thought that was a bit much. But once we started, now people have really come to support the organization, and it's really gone great so far.
And you have, is it 2 days a week? Help me understand in terms of food drives and...
So we have several programs. The emphasis is the food pantry. We have every Sunday and every Thursday, we have a food pantry. Sundays from 10 to 1, and Thursdays from 6 to 8. We serve anyone in Monroe County. And we also have a monthly food pantry that is every first Saturday of the month from 12 to 3. We also have a backpack drive that's coming up. Last year we did about 250. We're hoping to do 400 this year. We do a winter coat drive. We have several activities that we do, and we're trying to expand our services to serve the community as much as possible.
A special thank you to my guest, Irshad Altheimer, for all you're doing in our community. And to learn more about the Baraka Muslim Charity, for assistance or to get involved in their work, go to barakamuslimcharity.org. Rochester may have long and intense winters, and there may be more cloudy days and those filled with bright sunny skies, but any critic could find something wrong with their respective city. So while there are a number of efforts and initiatives underway to help improve the Rochester region, there are reasons to celebrate our city and Monroe County right now. Two local blogs are building community through highlighting the many places to explore, things to experience and reasons to love Rochester. Joining me now to share their findings is Kate Antoniadis, founder of the blog We Love Rochester, Justin Doucette, co-founder of the blog and social media project Explore Rochester, and Eitan Friedenberg, a contributor to Explore Rochester. Welcome to all of you, and thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
So it seems that you can always find someone who unfortunately has something, a complaint or a gripe about their city. And I'm curious to know if that is why, in part, you started your respective blogs and social media sites to kind of, in some ways, change that narrative. And Kate, I'll start with you if you can explain the backstory.
Yeah, that was the exact reason. I'm a Rochester native, and growing up there was kind of this feeling of there's nothing to do in Rochester, which of course is completely wrong, and especially today there's even more. So I thought asking all kinds of Rochesterians, what are your favorite things about Rochester, putting them in one place is just a great way to celebrate the city and the area.
Justin, what about you and your team?
Exactly the same thing. I was one of the people that wanted to get out of here. I was like, there's nothing to do. And it wasn't until I started coming downtown and realizing just how much there was to do that I was like, we've got a lot going on here. Let's take advantage of it. And so Steve Carter, who is the founder of Explore Rochester, reached out to me, and we made this happen, put this together. So.
Well, when I became aware of both of these projects in particular, and another blog called I Heart ROC, they drew my attention to places and experiences that I had forgotten about, and things that maybe I did a few years ago but just didn't come to memory or mind. So I want to know how much of this is about reminding people of some of the great highlights and the places to see in Rochester versus introducing people to new perspectives and new explorations that they may not have thought about before.
Well, I'm a relative newcomer to Rochester. I moved here just 4 years ago to start graduate school. And for a long time, I didn't have a car, so I was exploring the city mainly by foot and by bike. And for me, photography was a particularly exciting way to explore the city, to constantly be going downtown by myself, exploring neighborhoods that were unfamiliar and finding architecture that excited and intrigued me. And social media and connecting with people as part of Explore Rochester has been a great way to get out into unfamiliar territory. And having lived here for only 4 years, I'm constantly finding new places to explore.
I think in some ways is that fresh perspective that couldn't be good, in terms of versus those who have lived here and born and raised here. Sometimes you can bring something to the table that maybe others may not consider.
Definitely. Yeah.
For We Love Rochester, it's kind of a combination. Whenever I hear about a new restaurant or kind of an interesting new business, I like to contact the person, not every single person, but I like to contact them when I can and share both what they love about Rochester and link, of course, to their website and give a little publicity to the new businesses, which it seems like they're starting all the time. But on the other hand, it's interesting to see the things that keep coming up, the themes that keep coming up with the contributors. They're almost 90 now. The biggest things probably are restaurants, the arts, and parks. And for summertime, of course, there are just so many parks, and including, like you're saying, ones that people might not think about, like Corbett's Glen, for example.
Well, I want to know, how do you decide if something is worth highlighting and sharing? And Justin, what goes into this process? Because you are a contributor-driven, site and project.
Correct.
So how do you determine what makes the cut, what we should share?
So what we do is we choose a contributor, and from then on, it's entirely their idea. They can do whatever they want with their 5 to 8 images, as long as Rochester is the nearest city. So if they want to go out to Letchworth for a day and include that in their Explore Rochester week, they can do that. So it's about getting their perspective on what do they do with their time in Rochester. So it's really unique because you could have somebody that is a photographer and has gone to all these different places to shoot photos, whether they like to shoot waterfalls or birds or nature. Or you could have somebody that works a normal 9 to 5 and on the weekends they like to get out and see things. And so you see these two different perspectives, and more than two different perspectives. But it's all entirely their idea. They do whatever they'd like and we say, awesome, and then just take care of posting it.
Got it.
So that's why we wanted to make sure to have a contributor on today, because that's what makes up everything that we do. We're just facilitators, and they're they're building everything and we're just bringing them together, which is really exciting.
So how do you decide, Eitan, and what are some of those things that you've seen that you said this is spectacular, and you have to share it and share that perspective on the site?
Well, I focused during my week on Explore Rochester on architecture in the downtown core. I feel like downtown is incredibly underutilized. There's so much historic architecture, the urban fabric is complex and beautiful, and people tend to forget that there is so much history encoded in every street and every public space. And I really focused basically from the inner loop in. I photographed the Powers Building downtown, one of the most beautiful buildings I have seen during my time in Western New York. I even photographed the construction on the inner loop because I felt that that was a major project that would bring recognition to the ways that Rochester was trying to revitalize and move forward. So for me, architecture and the urban landscape was the focus, and I was hoping to maybe inspire some people to take themselves out on a walking tour downtown and experiences those spaces for themselves.
Well, I want to know for viewers, it's the summertime, right? Look, we might have crazy winters, but we definitely can capitalize on the summer times in Rochester. What are some of those places where you would say, trust me, based on the contributions you've received, you would say, go check out this place? If you could pick one place, what would that be? And I'll start with you, Kate.
Wow, one
Sorry. Or two.
I don't know why this keeps popping into my mind, but talking about places where people might not have even heard of, Chimney Bluffs is just such a fascinating place that I didn't even know growing up was there.
What is it?
It's just like these rock formations. I forgot where it is actually.
It's in Sodas.
In Sodas,
Yeah.
that's right. Just these amazing rock formations. It's a great spot for photography, just to walk along the water and get out of the city and for the summertime and get some summer air.
What about you, Justin? What did you say?
That was the most hard question that I've been asked, but I like to just go to some of the parks in the city, whether it's Cobb's Hill or Highland Park, just because you can be surrounded by all this greenery and look out and see the city itself and all these buildings. It's a beautiful juxtaposition that you can see, and it's nice to just be surrounded by that greenery for a little bit when we can get it, when we have it.
For me, the answer would have to be really a walking tour of downtown. The Landmark Society, which I'm not affiliated with, but I love everything they do. And they happen to have these great self-guided walking tours that you can download onto your phone or print out. And they give you a new perspective on High Falls, on the business district downtown, on Cobb's Hill, and Cornhill. So those walking tours are amazing.
Justin Doucette, Eitan Friedenberg of Explore Rochester, and Kate Antoniadis, founder of We Love Rochester. I want to thank you all for sharing your perspectives and for helping us appreciate our community. Check out their sites, share your own stories and perspectives and photographs at weloverochesterny.com and explorerochester.us. One look at a painting by local artist Andrea Durfee, and it's clear there's a story being told through her work. Her watercolor paintings channel ancient mythology and emotion. According to Durfee, her art reflects the dynamic between visceral and raw, structure and control. WXXI's Arts in Focus program recently spent some time with Durfee in her studio and filed this report.
I grew up loving stories, loving mythology. I loved anything that had strong characters that could overcome, that seemed to be able to control their environment, but at the same time have those very human qualities. Currently, I've been focusing on watercolor figures that are incorporated into landscapes. They are a lot of references to Persephone or Athena or different Demeter, different type of goddesses that hold close to my heart from growing up. I use mythology and storytelling in a way that helps me process experiences and emotions that I go through in my daily life. The process of creating, it's a ritual at this point. I have a really set flow to how I do create. And while I come to the paper with a set idea, once that creation process is underway, I really kind of go blank. I let my subconscious take over. I don't try and force the paint or interpret too much. And I pay more attention to the inner dialogue and the dialogue between myself and the painting. My style of looking at things, it's fragmented. What are the fragments? What are the pieces that make up the whole? It's a lot of putting together and taking apart, putting together, taking apart. What are my actions on this painting? How is that reflective of the issue that I'm struggling with? It's that conversation. It's asking questions like, "Ooh, I really like how this paint splattered that way. Well, why did I like that? Like, why was it that that kind of erraticness, like that it just kind of jumped? Why did I like that?" So I'm always asking myself questions while I'm creating. I hope that when someone approaches my work and looks at it, I hope that they take a walk through it. I hope that they look and kind of see the fragments. What are the pieces that make up the whole, and kind of take a journey through that piece.
And that's it for this edition of Need to Know, Rochester's news magazine. I'm your host, Helene Bianduti-Hofer. Thank you for joining me tonight, throughout the weekend, and online at WXXInews.org. I'll see you next week.